Here's how we saved Jayden's business over 10K every single month. Now, before I explain anything, let me show you the end product. This is a custom-built property management platform where basically every property, every guest, every expense and statement is all in one place. All we're breaking down exactly what we built, how it saves them some time and money, and why most founders who try to do this themselves end up with something that doesn't even work. So let's get into it. Jayden here runs a rental business with multiple properties, guests coming in and out, different expenses per property, and owner statements to produce every single month. On paper, it seems like a solid operation, but in practice, like you can imagine how fast this can go downhill. Here's what a typical week looked like before we built anything. A guest would book in, Jayden manually sends the check-in details over WhatsApp. An expense comes in for one of the properties. It gets logged on a spreadsheet if he remembers. Then at the end of the month, once that arrives, he has to manually pull the data from 3 different places, cross-reference it, build the owner statements by hand, and somewhere in the middle of all this, a double-booked calendar happens. A whole mess, and these are not hustle problems. They're not staffing problems. They're systems problems. And this is the same problem we see across almost every business we talk to, because they're not failing because they don't work hard enough. They're failing because they've outgrown the tools that they started with, and nobody's ever sat down with them and actually designed a system around how that business specifically runs and operates. And with the efficiency of AI, that's absolutely possible. So there's no reason to not do it, especially because we do it better than most. The majority of people try one of 2 things. They either try to hire more staff, another VA, another admin, which just adds costs that doesn't fix the underlying inefficiency. Option 2 is they try to do it themselves. They try to patch together some sort of Zapier automation, a Notion database here and there, an attempted lovable project every month or so. Nothing that really works how they truly want, because neither of those is a solution and both of them buy time. What Jayden needed was one platform around his specific operation with automations handling everything that repeats, and that's exactly what we built him. I want to make one thing clear, because if you're watching this, there's a good chance that you've already tried to build something like this yourself, or you've paid someone a lot of money and it didn't work the way you hoped. Here's why that happens. Most founders approach an app build like a list of features. Don't be like this guy, because they come in with a list of things they want the app to do, a calendar, a client log, a tracker, all this good stuff, and whoever they hire builds exactly that, a list of features. And the problem isn't the features. The problem is features are not a real system. A real system is data flowing in one direction, every input captured once in the right place, and everything downstream pulls from it automatically. So when you just build features, you end up with a bunch of disconnected tools where you still have manual steps, you still have errors, because you just moved the chaos from spreadsheets to an app, and it happens at the very start before any line of code is written. And the fix for this is not a better developer. The fix is doing systems thinking and planning first, which is exactly where we started with Jayden. Back to Jayden. Step 1 with him was we mapped everything out before we built anything. This took a week of calls and planning, not because it's inherently complicated, but because you have to understand the business at the operational level before you can design a system around it. We went through every part of how his business ran, how properties were tracked, categorized, the information each guest needed at each stage of their stay. We asked, we documented, and we got to work. I remember there was this one point where Jayden had asked us, what we do is we just send the client a message when they book in, and we asked, okay, what message, what happens if they don't read the message? And basically finding this gap, asking these questions, ended up solving a gap that a few clients were complaining about in the last year. Because we're not just designing an app, we're auditing the whole operation. Every gap you find before the build is a problem you don't have to fix later, and it saves so much more headache. By the end of this mapping phase, we had a complete picture of the data model, and only then did we start designing. Here is what we built for him. Part 1 was the property management side. So every property basically lives here. This is the internal interface. This is the public interface where the guests can browse and book in. Here we have the name, the address, the owner details, all that good stuff attached to that specific property. When something changes, the checking code, the house rules, any like cleaning fees, these kind of stuff. Part 2 is where every booking is created. So this is the user flow that the users can of course book in. They can select the property of the dates that they want, and the moment a booking is confirmed, the system triggers a guest onboarding flow automatically where they receive a message. The property owner gets notified that there's a guest requesting to stay, and the booking is then logged against the property record. All of this without any manual steps, no one's sending any messages manually, all automated. Now part 3 is where the ROI becomes pretty obvious, because at the end of each month, the system generates owner statements automatically. It pulls pretty much the booking revenue for each property, it deducts the logged expenses, applies any fees, and creates a big formatted statement. Now before this was a whole manual process where they were pulling the booking data, pull the expense data, cross-reference, calculate it, format it, email it to the owner, and then repeat that for every single property. A huge mess. Literally one click, the statement is generated from the data that's already in the system. Now let's talk about the part that actually creates leverage. The platform on its own is already a significant upgrade, but the automation layer is what turns it from a better tool into an actual system. So this is what runs automatically in Jayden's system now. Automated follow-up message sent within 24 hours with a thank you and a link requesting a review, where it has guests coming back without Airbnb, which is important and we'll circle back to later, because this was a huge leverage point for why they were able to save 10K every month with this app we built them. Then statements generated. So at the end of each month triggers the statement generation for every property. Of course, no more manual steps, just automatically generates the statement. Payment tracking. This is a pretty big one because any outstanding balances are immediately flagged. Jayden doesn't have to check who's paid and who hasn't. The system just tells them. And then when they do need to pay, the system will also send that automatically. Now, specifically what changed? Because before the build, Jayden was spending roughly 15 to 20 hours a week on all of this admin work. And it was all eating into time that should have been going towards growing the portfolio, growing the business. After the build, the guest onboarding was fully automated, no more manual steps, owner statements generated in one click. And with all this system, the guest gets a more professional experience with faster responses, cleaner communication. The property owner also gets accurate statements on time every month without anyone needing to chase around data. And Jayden gets everything back under control. And that was the shift. Just one platform built around their actual specific operation, with automations handling everything that doesn't need a human decision. Now you may be wondering, okay, Matteo, this is great, but I know it saves him so much time, but how does it actually save him so much money? Here, let me show you the number that actually made Jayden commit to this from our first call we had with him. Let's just do the math on commission, because their properties are on Airbnb, which take a 15% commission. So Jayden runs over 50 properties and an average nightly rate of $200 with the standard 70% occupancy rate. That's roughly 21 booked nights a month per property. Every booking that goes through Airbnb, Jayden pays 15% in host fees. Total monthly booking revenue of $210K. That's $31.5K a month going straight to Airbnb, a platform he doesn't even own. Now, he's not going to be moving everyone off of Airbnb overnight. That's just not realistic. Nobody does that. But this is where it gets interesting, because if just 30% of his bookings shift to this direct through this own platform we built for him, that's close to 10K saved every month or 120K every year. The trade-off was that the platform we built for Jayden cost a fraction of what he saves in the first 90 days at even a 20% direct booking shift. Do the math, because the investment wasn't a risk. The risk was staying fully dependent on a platform they didn't even own. Also, if you're watching this and you're recognizing this situation, your operation running similar across a bunch of different tools, the problem isn't that you haven't found the right app or tool yet. The problem is that nobody has ever actually sat down with you and mapped out how your specific business actually works, then build a whole system around it. Most app builders will just take your feature list like that guy we saw before, but that is not enough, because you get features without architecture, and after 6 months, you're back where you started. So what actually works is mapping the operation first, all the edge cases, building one centralized platform, no putting together all our disconnected tools, automating what repeats, every recurring task that doesn't need a decision, that gets automated. Then we can measure what changes, and you'll see hours saved and mistakes avoided. And that's the framework. That's what we did for Jayden, And that is what a real build looks like. If you made it this far and you do run a B2C business with this kind of operational overhead, you can book a consultancy call below. It's just a focus call where we'll see exactly what a platform like this would look like for you. I do want to preface saying it's not a sales call, like no pressure. It's just to get a clear picture of where the inefficiency is and what it would take to fix it. So link is in the description. And with that said, we're Core Unlock. I'm Mateo, and I hope to see you soon.